Most sponsorship portfolio optimization work fails before it even starts, not because teams don't know what to do, not because there's a lack of effort, and not because the properties themselves are flawed. It fails because teams start in the wrong place. They start with what they have. They look at the portfolio, they look at the properties, they look at what's coming up for renewal, and they try to improve everything from there. But they skip the most fundamental question. What is this portfolio actually supposed to do? And without a clear answer to that question, everything that follows winds up being a lot harder than it needs to be. You see this most clearly at the property level. Most sponsorships aren't actually built around a clearly defined strategic lens. They're justified through a mix of reach, visibility, brand association, internal enthusiasm, all of which absolutely have value, but none of which define the job the partnership is supposed to do. And that is the real issue because a sponsorship isn't just an asset, it's a tool. It's something you're investing in to deliver specific outcomes. Now, in reality, most sponsorships are expected to deliver more than one thing. They might drive awareness in a priority market, for example. They might support commercial outcomes in a specific channel. They might engage employees internally, build brand equity over time. And that's all fine, of course. That's actually one of the strengths of sponsorship, that it can address multiple objectives at the same time. The problem isn't that there is multiple objectives at play. The problem is that the objectives are rarely defined clearly and almost never prioritized. So everything ends up mattering, but nothing is clearly understood in the end. And when that happens, execution starts to drift, activation gets spread way too thin, budgets don't line up with expectations. And in the meantime, different stakeholders across the organization start working towards different definitions of success. And when it's time to evaluate performance, you're not really evaluating anything, you're just reacting. This shows up most clearly at renewal cycle. A partnership comes up, the relationship is good, the property is credible, and the question is simple: should we keep this? In most organizations, unfortunately, there isn't a structured process behind that question. There might be a quick check-in, if that, a sense of how it feels, maybe a conversation about budget, and then the decision gets made, usually to renew. So decisions are happening, but they are not grounded. They're not anchored in a clear definition of what the partnership was meant to deliver in the first place. And over time, that compounds. Portfolios expand, more properties get added, budgets get stretched thinner, and expectations wind up increasing at the same time. So when teams try to optimize, that work gets really heavy. More meetings, more data, more opinions, but not necessarily better decisions because the inputs are still unclear. A more effective starting point is actually much simpler. Don't try to fix the whole portfolio. Take one property and pressure test it properly. What was it expected to deliver? What did it actually deliver? And what matters most going forward? Not as a heavy exercise, just with clarity. When you do that properly, something interesting tends to happen. You start not just learning about that property, you start to see how the property overall is actually working. And that's where the pattern shows up. In many cases, there are just too many properties, not enough focus. Activation often is underfunded relative to what leadership expects. And there's very little clarity on what's actually core versus what's just there. And that's the shift. Sponsorship portfolio optimization isn't just about improving what you have, it is about structuring the work in a way that allows you to make better decisions. Because most of the time, the issue isn't a lack of ideas, it's that the work isn't set up clearly enough to execute. And until that changes, optimization will continue to fall short, no matter how much effort gets applied. If this is something you're working through, we're happy to compare notes on how to bring more structure into your portfolio. Let's connect.